Let tonight be different. No counting sheep, no racing thoughts. Just imagine, my voice is a paper boat, and you're letting it carry you to where stories don't demand attention, but simply unfold like petals in the dark. We'll begin with a star who forgot how to shine. Then visit a river woven from tears. Later, we'll hear the song between clock ticks. And finally, wander a library where dreams go when we forget them. Make yourself comfortable. There's no need to listen carefully. Let the words wash over you like waves smoothing sand. Your eyelids are heavy already. That's good. Very good. Now breathe in and out. When you wake tomorrow, you'll remember nothing but the feeling of being gently carried away. We begin tonight when the stars held their breath.
The star that forgot to twinkle. The night the stars held their breath. The sky was darker than usual that evening, not with clouds or storms, but with absence. The moon had tucked herself away behind the horizon, leaving the stars to keep watch alone. Among them, a small star named Astra burned with a quiet panic. She had always been the first to dance when night fell, her light pulsing in perfect time to a melody only she to hear. The other stars relied on her rhythm to keep the constellations in harmony. The Great Bear paced his celestial circles to her beat, and the Milky Way's shimmering river flowed smoother when Astra twinkled brightest. But tonight, her light was still. No flicker, no pulse, just a single unwavering point of silver in the endless black. "Astra?" whispered Viga, leaning closer. "Where is your song?" Astra tried to answer, but the music that had always lived in her core had vanished. She strained to remember it, the rising notes, the dips and crescendos that once made her glow ripple like laughter, but her mind was silent. Below, unnoticed by the worried stars, a single window glowed in a sleepy village, and behind that window, a boy named Eli was counting the heavens and realizing something was wrong. Chapter 1: The Boy Who Collected Sounds. Eli's room was a museum of quiet treasures. On his shelf sat seashells that still murmured of distant oceans. In drawers he kept feathers that remembered the weight of flight. But his most prized possession was a row of glass jars, each holding a captured moment. Jar number 1, the hum of a bumblebee drowsy with pollen. Jar number 2, the first crackle of autumn leaves underfoot. Jar number 3, his favorite, the wind's evening song, the one that slipped through his window just as he was drifting to sleep. Tonight, though, his ritual of counting stars stalled at number 17. "Astra's gone still," he whispered, fogging the cold glass with his breath. His grandmother had once told him that stars twinkle when they're happy. "Their light dances," she'd said, "just like yours does when you hear good news." Eli pressed his palm against the window. Somewhere up there, Astra was unhappy. And if her light had frozen, perhaps her song was lost. He knew what he had to do. Chapter 2: The Cloud Ladder. The cloud ladder wasn't something you could see with daytime eyes. It revealed itself only in that hazy moment when bedtime stories ended and dreams began. A shimmering climb of mist and moonbeams woven by spiders who spun with threads of twilight. Elo had found it once before when he chased a firefly into a dream. Tonight, he sought it deliberately. With his sound jar tucked safely in his pocket and his slippers left behind, for ladders like these are best climbed barefoot, he stepped onto the first rung. The ladder sighed under his weight, adjusting to his presence. As he ascended, the world below softened. The rooftops blurred into patches of charcoal, and the distant mountains became mere wrinkles in the earth's slumbering face. Halfway up, a gust of wind tugged at his pajamas. "You're late," it seemed to say. "She's been waiting." Chapter 3: The Edge of Everything. The top of the cloud ladder didn't lead to land, but to the edge, a place where sky and starlight frayed like the hem of a well-loved blanket. Here, the air smelled like snowflakes and silver. And there, curled into herself like a fallen leaf, was Astra. Up close, she wasn't just a point of light, but a being of delicate fire, her surface shifting between gold and blue, as if unsure which color to wear. "You came," she whispered. Her voice was the sound of icicles melting in sunlight. Eli sat beside her, legs dangling over the abyss of night. "You stopped twinkling." Astra's light dimmed. "I forgot how. The song, it's gone." Eli understood forgetfulness. He once forgotten the taste of his grandmother's honey cake until a single crumb found its way onto his tongue and brought the memory rushing back. "Maybe," he said slowly, "you just need to hear it again." He uncorked his jar. The wind escaped in an eager rush, carrying 3 layered sounds. The pines, a chorus of needles humming in harmony. The brook, water scribbling its endless story over smooth stones. The crickets, their legs keeping time like 100 tiny metronomes. Astra trembled. "That's..." A note rose in her core, tentative at first, then stronger. It wasn't her whole song, but a fragment, like finding a single puzzle piece and suddenly remembering the picture it belonged to. Eli grinned. "Again?" He blew into the jar once more, and this time the wind brought new verses. The creak of a porch swing rocking, the plink of dew falling from a spider's web, a child, perhaps Eli himself, humming absent-mindedly. Astra's light flared. Then, Twinkle! A single perfect pulse. Eli's heart leapt. "You did it!" But Astra's joy was short-lived. "It's not enough. I need..." She strained, her glow flickering unevenly. "The rest is still missing." Unseen by Eli, the moon had been watching from her hiding place below the horizon. She was older than the stars, and though she loved them, she envied their twinkling. Her light was constant, a solemn vigil with no room for play. "I could help," the moon murmured, her voice echoing up through the clouds. "But stars must learn their songs alone." Eli turned toward the voice. "Please, she just needs a little more." The moon considered. She said, "Bring me something forgotten, and I'll lend her the memory of music." Eli searched his pockets. All he had were a pebble, a crumpled candy wrapper, and the feather. The one he found on the first day of spring, its quill still warm from the bird that had shed it. He'd meant to keep it forever. But this, he said, holding it out, "it remembers flying." The moon took it silently. Then a single silvery note rang through the sky, clear as a bell. Astra gasped. "That's it! That's the missing part!" Her light swelled bright and sure, and suddenly she was alight with her old rhythm, faster now, as if making up for lost time. Twinkle, twinkle. Pause. Twinkle. Eli clapped. Chapter 6. The Gift of Golden Dust. Morning approached, its pink fingers already stretching across the horizon. "You have to go," Astra said urgently, "before the cloud ladder fades." Eli nodded, but hesitated. "Will you remember next time?" Astra glowed softly. Then, with a sound like a sigh, she shook herself, and a sprinkle of stardust drifted down into Eli's palm. It was warm, and when he looked closer, he saw that each speck pulsed in perfect time with Astra's twinkling. "So you'll always know I'm singing," she whispered. The cloud ladder trembled. Dawn was coming. Eli scrambled down just as the first rays of sun touched his windowsill. Epilogue. The Language of Light. Years later, when Eli had grown tall and his sound jar sat dusty on his shelf, he still kept the stardust in a locket around his neck. On clear nights, he'd step outside, tilt his face upward, and smile, because there, shining just for him, was Astra. Twinkle, twinkle, pause, twinkle. And if you listen very, very closely on the quietest of nights, you might hear the wind carrying a familiar song, one that reminds the stars how to dance. The end.
The river of midnight tears, where forgotten sorrows flow. There exists a river that appears only when the clock strikes 12. A shimmering ribbon of liquid moonlight winding through sleeping forests and silent towns. Its waters are not of rain or snow, but of tears. Tears shed for dreams left unfinished, for words never spoken, for goodbyes that came too soon. The river has many names. The sorrowful current, as called by weeping willows. The phantom stream, as whispered by night watchmen. But to those who know its secret, it is simply the river of midnight tears. Its waters are clear as glass and cold as a December window pane. To touch them is to remember every sadness you thought you'd buried, not sharply, but softly, like an old scar aching before rain. Most avoid it. But one night, an old seamstress named Mira walked toward it with purpose. Chapter 1. The Seamstress of Mended Things. Mira's hands were maps of her life. Thread-scarred fingertips, a palm creased like well-folded linen. She had spent 60 years stitching. Wedding gowns that outlasted marriages. Patchwork quilts that held childhood fevers at bay. And once, a shroud so finely woven, the mourners swore they saw the deceased smile through it. But her greatest work lay ahead.
Tonight, she carried a net spun from spider silk and starlight, a fabric so delicate it could catch tears without breaking them. Over her shoulder hung an empty satchel lined with velvet, waiting to be filled. "Where are you going, grandmother?" yawned the village children as she passed. "To mend what's unraveled." And with that, she stepped into the woods, where the river flowed. Chapter 2: The Firefly Without a Light. The forest at midnight was a cathedral of shadows. Mira followed the sound of liquid silver, the river's quiet song. But halfway there, she noticed a faint click, click, click beside her. On a toadstool sat Lumen, a firefly whose lantern had dimmed to embers. In his front legs, he clutched a tiny mirror, no larger than a thumbnail. "Lost your glow?" Mira asked gently. Lumen's antennae drooped. "The moon borrowed it and forgot to return it." He tilted the mirror, catching a sliver of moonlight. "Now I collect what light I can." Mira studied him, a firefly who couldn't shine, carrying reflections instead. How familiar. "Come." she said, offering her finger as a perch. "We're going to the river source." Lumen hesitated, then climbed aboard. Chapter 3: The Wellspring of Sorrows. The river began not as a spring, but as a tree. The weeping sentinel, an ancient oak with bark like crumpled parchment, stood at the heart of the forest. Its roots drank from hidden aquifers, and its leaves, when stirred by the wind, sounded like someone sighing your name. From its hollow trunk spilled the first tears of the river. Mira kneeled, dipping her net into the luminous flow. The strands glistened as droplets clung to them, each one holding a child's disappointment when the birthday pony never came, a widow's silent grief on an untouched pillow, the artist's frustration when the colors wouldn't obey. Lumen watched, his mirror trembling Why catch them? Some sorrows should drown. No, Mira said. Even broken things can be remade. She poured the captured tears into her satchel, where they pooled like liquid mercury. Chapter 4. The Loom of the Night Sky. Mira's cottage stood at the forest's edge. Its thatched roof frosted with moss. Inside, her loom waited, its warp threads strung with strands of twilight for softness, comet tails for strength, and now midnight tears for memory. For 3 nights, she worked. Night 1. She wove the tears into the weft, their weight making the fabric ripple like water. Night 2. Lumen hovered above, angling his mirror to stitch moonbeams between the threads. Night 3. The cloak began to sing, a low, soothing hum, like a mother rocking a cradle. By dawn, it was finished. The mantle of mended nights shimmered like a galaxy spun into cloth. To wear it was to feel every sorrow you'd ever carried, and then, slowly,
The Clockmaker's silent song. When the ticking stopped. In the city of Horologia, time didn't just pass, it was kept. Every citizen carried a pocket watch, its gears polished to a whisper. The clocks were more than tools, they were living things, their rhythmic ticks forming the heartbeat of the streets. The baker's timer rang in golden crusts. The schoolmaster's chime dismissed restless children, and the tower clock's gong measured the town's shared breaths. Until the morning, they all stopped. The old clockmaker, Horace Silverhand, discovered it first. His workshop, usually alive with the music of 100 ticking mechanisms, had gone still. Not a single pendulum swung, not one gear turned. He checked the mechanisms, oil levels, spring tensions, jewel bearings, all perfect. Then he realized the truth. The problem wasn't in the clocks. It was in the song of time, the silent melody that had always lived in the spaces between the ticks, and the world had forgotten how to listen. Chapter 1. The Girl Who Heard Butterflies. Horace's granddaughter Luna was born with ears like sonar. She could hear the pop of a dandelion seed breaking free, the hush of ink drying on parchment, the vibration of a spider's web attuning itself to the wind. When she pressed her ear to the frozen clocks, she didn't hear broken gears. She heard absence. "Grandfather," she said, "the song is missing." Horace paled. He hadn't heard the song himself in decades. Few adults could. Time's melody faded from most ears by adolescence, like the memory of a dream upon waking. "Then we must find the keeper of the song," he whispered. Luna already knew where to look. Chapter 2. The Hall of Sleeping Clocks. At the city's heart stood a forgotten rotunda, the Hall of Sleeping Clocks. Inside, thousands of timepieces hung in suspended animation. A sundial with no shadow, an hourglass where sand floated mid-fall, a cathedral clock frozen at the moment its maker died, and at the center, atop a pedestal of tarnished brass, perched the mechanical nightingale, the first clock ever built in Horologia, and the original singer of the Song of Time. Now it sat motionless, its metal feathers dusty, its jeweled eyes dull. Luna approached, breathing in the scent of old oil and loneliness. "Wake up," she pleaded, stroking its wings. Nothing. Then, acting on instinct, she exhaled softly over its beak, just as one might warm a cold key before turning a lock. Chapter 3. The Secret Between the Ticks. The nightingale's eyes flickered. "Luna!" it rasped, its voice like a needle scraping a copper plate. "You've come to restart time." "Tell me how," she urged. The bird's head creaked toward the frozen clocks. "Time only moves when someone remembers to wait." "Wait, but everyone's waiting for the clocks to—" "Not for the tick," interrupted the nightingale, "for the space after it." Understanding dawned. The song didn't live in the ticks themselves, but in the gaps between them, the breath before the next note. Luna sat cross-legged on the cold marble floor. She closed her eyes and did something no one in Horologia had done in years. She listened to the silence. At first, nothing. Then, a faint resonance, thinner than spider silk. A hold. The space between imagined ticks hummed. "Breathe." Luna's pulse synchronized with it. "Now." The nightingale's gears gave a shuddering click. One wing twitched. Then a single crystal clear note rang out, so pure it made the dust motes dance in the sunbeams. Throughout the hall, clocks began to stir. Pendulums swung tentatively. Gears ground against decades of rust. The hourglass's sand resumed its fall. But something was different. Chapter 5. The Liberation of Time. As the song spread through Horologia, citizens gasped. The baker's watch now ran slower near the oven's warmth. The gardener's pocket timer sped up when roses bloomed. The mayor's antique chronometer stopped entirely
during his daughter's laughter. Time had become personal. Horace rushed to the hall, tools in hand, ready to fix the inconsistencies. But when he saw Luna, her face alight, her hands keeping time to a melody only she could hear, he paused. The nightingale turned its head. "You once heard it too, old man." And then Horace remembered the summer he was 9, when afternoons stretched like taffy and his mother's pocket watch had inexplicably gained 2 hours during a picnic. He'd assumed it was broken. Now he understood. "We didn't lose the song," he murmured. "We started correcting it." Chapter 6. The New Keepers. Luna became Horologe's first time listener, teaching others to hear the spaces between. For midwives, how to let labor clocks run at their own pace. For students, letting exam timers slow during hard questions. For mourners, allowing grandfather clocks to pause at grief's weight. The mechanical nightingale still sings, but now its melody changes daily. Sometimes a waltz, sometimes a dirge, always true. And as for the clocks, they still keep time, but now time keeps them too. Epilogue. When your watch acts strange, if ever your own clock behaves oddly, racing during a kiss, dragging during a lecture, stopping as you read the perfect sentence, don't wind it. Listen. Between the ticks, you might hear Luna's nightingale singing the oldest truth. Time was never meant to be kept, only cherished. The end.
The Library of Forgotten Dreams. The island that only exists at 3:07 a.m. Somewhere between the last sigh of midnight and the first yawn of dawn, when sleep is deepest and stars are most talkative, there floats an island made of mismatched book covers, leather-bound Mondays, cloth-stitched Sundays, the steam off sleeping teacups, one perfect maple leaf from a tree that never existed. This is the Library of Forgotten Dreams, where every unremembered dream goes to rest. Its shelves stretch farther than any eye can see, filled with volumes that hum when touched. Open one, and the pages, written in fog ink, will show you the birthday party you dreamed at age 6 but forgot by breakfast, that conversation with a departed loved one that slipped away with the morning alarm, the brilliant story idea that dissolved in the shower. The librarian, a great horned owl named Madame Luminelle, tends them all with moon-glass spectacles perched on her beak. And one night, a boy named Theo found his way there. Chapter 1. The Paper Boat That Sailed Upward. Theo had never remembered a dream. While his classmates described flying over pyramids or solving riddles posed by foxes, he woke with only a vague sense of having gone somewhere wonderful, like catching the scent of a bakery just as the door swings shut. His grandmother understood. On his 10th birthday, she folded him a boat from parchment so thin, light passed through it like stained glass. "Follow it tonight," she whispered, "but only if it sails up." At 2:58 a.m., Theo watched the boat lift from his windowsill, not on water, but on an invisible current of almost remembered things. He grabbed its string, spun from his own hair, and followed. Chapter 2: The Catalogue of Lost Adventures. The island smelled like old books and just bruised peaches. Madame Luminel waited at the entrance, her feathers the color of newspaper left in the sun. "Theodore Crossley," she hooted, "born Tuesday, 3:22 a.m., 614 dreams archived." Theo gaped. "That many?" "Oh, yes." She led him past shelves where books floated, recent dreams, crouched, nightmares, glowed, the ones that almost got remembered. "Here's yours," she said, gesturing to a section where volumes hovered like dandelion seeds. "All Theo dreams are cross-referenced by emotion. Joy here, wonder there. First day of school anxiety in the basement." Then she handed him a blank book, bound in wood grain, "for the ones that haven't happened yet." Chapter 3: The Language of Almost. "How do I remember?" Theo asked. Madame Luminel adjusted her spectacles. "You don't. Not fully. Dreams are fireflies. Catch them and their light goes out." She tapped the blank book. "But you can keep the afterglow." So Theo drew. Not the castle from last Tuesday's dream, but the weightlessness of its floating bridges. Not the mermaid's face, but the tingle of salt spray she'd thrown at him. Not the forgotten name of his dream friend, but the warmth in his chest when they'd hugged. As he worked, the pages began to pulse when touched, smell like the dream they referenced. One reeked of wet dog, another burnt toast, whisper in a language made of eyelid flutters. "Good," clucked Madame Luminel. "Now they have somewhere to return to." Chapter 4: The Disappearing Act. At dawn's first blush, the island began to dissolve. "Time to go," said the owl, tucking Theo's book into his pajama pocket. "Yours will be different." "How?" "Wait and almost see." The paper boat carried him home. When Theo landed in bed, the book was gone, but his fingers smelled of stardust and something just beyond recognition. Chapter 5: The Words That Came in the Morning. Next dawn, Theo woke with a taste like honeycomb on his tongue. "Melody," he murmured to the empty room. The word hung in the air, trailing the sensation of humming with a choir of crickets, a half-remembered tune in 3/4 time. The color of sound, which is mauve in case you wondered. Day after day, new words arrived.
Horizon, carrying the urge to run forever. Library, with a phantom weight of books in his arms. You were there, all one word, sticky as dream logic. They weren't the dreams themselves, but their shadows. And somehow, that was better. Epilogue, when you almost remember. Theo grew up to write stories. All the best ones begin with his morning words. Madame Luminel still tends the library, though these days, Theo's section has its own wing. When you wake with a word on your lips for no reason, the ghost of a laugh still in your lungs, a bruise from a fall you didn't take, don't chase it. Close your eyes and thank whatever dream left it behind. The end.